I have champagne cocktail, please.
Yes, sir.
Champagne cocktail, please.
Yes, madam.
You know, at parties, everybody's supposed to be very happy. But perhaps you dislike them as much as I do. Still, as parties go, I think it might have been worse.
Do you?
Very nearly was a great deal worse.
Oh?
Thank you. Where it appears to be treated to a little dancing exhibition. But now I understand where to be spared that horror.
Mr. Lermontov, I am that horror.
It's a bit late for apologies, isn't it?
Yes, a little late, I think.
All the same, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry.
But you're not sorry I didn't dance, are you?
Oh.
May I ask why?
Because, my dear Miss
Victoria Page.
My dear Miss Page, if I accept an invitation to a party, I do not expect to find myself at an audition.
Yes, you're quite right.
Why do you want to dance?
Why do you want to live?
I don't know exactly why, but I must.
That's my answer, too.
Come with me.
Where to?
We are going to have a little talk.
But I don't think I want to talk to you.
Don't you worry, I'll do the talking.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of ColoniaBook.com and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
And we have a very special guest today. We don't often have guests, but we talked about this book actually a little while back, but we are delighted to have Dale Bridges here, who is the author of a book called The Mean Reds. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you so much for having me.
I don't want to pretend like you're not here, but for those of you who are new to the podcast, yes, this is a podcast where we talk about movies that have been adapted from books. But sometimes, because we do a brand new episode every single week, sometimes we are looking at things that are not traditionally considered to be a book. You know, maybe it's a play or a magazine article or a musical or a song even, or a children's story like we're going to be talking about today, although a very, very grim one. See what I did there?
Heyo.
But if you have suggestions for books and movies or stories and movies, as long as it's a movie that has been adapted from any kind of literary source, we will consider it. And it has to be something that is widely available for everyone to get their eyes in front of. So it's got to be streaming somewhere. And the book has to be, or the source material also has to be readily available. But given those ground rules, if you've got suggestions to make, there's a few places where you can make them, interact with other listeners of this podcast, and meet us on the internet.
Yes, we have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. You type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. It's a private group, and we really do just talk about books and movies there. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram and Threads at Book versus a Movie. Spell that all out. Or you can send us an email, bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, send us your address and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Yes, Patreon. We've been doing the show now for 9 years. We have dozens of episodes there. So basically everything from 2020 and previous to that, they're up on our Patreon wall. The Silence of the Lambs is dropping next. We just dropped Psycho. We're going to be dropping a few more coming up, but all you people that do that, it just helps us with the books and the movies and just the basic costs for the show to put it all together. And we really appreciate all of you that help us.
And today we are talking, if you saw the title of this episode, you know that we are talking about the red shoes. We have a lot to discuss, but before we get to that, we should talk about the reason we picked this particular movie. Do you want to explain?
Yes, so our guest today is Dale Bridges, and he has a book called The Mean Reds, and Dale, can you give us sort of like the background of what the story is and what the Red Shoes has to do with your story? And it's a great book, by the way. We're both really enjoying it.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely, yeah. So the book, sort of a detective noir, but in an odd, untraditional way. The protagonist is a movie reviewer, a young movie reviewer who's obsessed with old movies in particular, to the point where he kind of would rather live in a fantasy world where he imagines himself in an old movie, and he also imagines that he's been jilted by the love of his life from college. His girlfriend left him for his best friend and went off to Hollywood to make movies, and they left him there, and poor him. He works at a very small newspaper. The editor, everybody else is busy, and there is an incident would happen where an exotic dancer has had a tragic accident and died in their town. It's just a slip and fall, but since Sam is so obsessed with old movies, he can't just let it be a slip and fall. He has to look for drugs and gangsters and all these things. And at the same time, he finds out that there's a local film festival in town, and he finds out that his former girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, the love of his life, is coming back into town with the director, his former best friend who stole her from him, and they are premiering a movie in town. And all of these things are pretty big stressors on Sam, and he's always a little bit high and a little bit drunk, and he's doing that more than usual. And this all comes to a head towards the end as his fantasy world gets away from him.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot. I love that every single chapter is titled after a classic movie, and it's very fun as you're reading to see like why you chose that particular movie to be the title of that chapter. It reminded me a little bit of one of my favorite Ray Bradbury stories called Death is a Lonely Business. Whoo, brain worked hard on that one. Yeah, where he's in this like crumbling Hollywood backdrop, and but I loved the mystery of it, and I loved the all of the vintage elements were really cool, and yet it's definitely a modern day. This person who people talk about like being born in the wrong time. You kind of get that idea that he sort of feels that way, and I really, really am enjoying. It's a very, very fun read.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of forgot your other prompt to talk about how the Red Shoes ties in, and thank you for bringing up. Yeah, each chapter is named after an old movie that either something, usually sort of just something that happens within the chapter feels sort of spiritually connected to. But one of the chapters, when Sam finally gets to the strip club to interview the owner and talk about what happened with the young dancer, that chapter is called The Red Shoes. And I named it that for a couple of reasons. The first one is kind of obvious, is that The Red Shoes is about dancing, and a strip club is a place of dancing. And so, but then the other one is The Red Shoes is about obsession. Right. And how far should obsession go? And is there too far? Are you willing to put art and your passion before even your own emotional and physical health? And during this story, you know that Sam is obsessed, and you're not sure how far he's willing to let that as an obsession go. But in that chapter, you find out that he's willing to put himself in danger in order to follow through with his obsession. So that's also why the chapter is named that.
Were there classic movies that you had in mind when you were writing to have the kind of the chapter theme that you had to jettison?
The idea of naming them after naming the chapters after movies, kind of, it wasn't at the end, but I was more than halfway through the novel before I thought that would be a good idea and a fun thing to do. Mm-hmm. And there are certainly a lot of classic movies that I love that I didn't get to find a way to work into the book. Although I give a nod to a lot of them in there. There's a lot of like little Easter eggs. Some of them pretty obvious and some more obscure, which you don't really have to get in order to, but I think it's really is a novel for movie lovers. That's what I wrote it in mind. I'm pretty obsessed with old movies myself. It's kind of a weird, my father was a small town fundamentalist preacher. So growing up, I wasn't really allowed to go to the movies. There was only one movie theater in the town of Yuma, Colorado. It was about 2,000 people there, and one movie theater, and I wasn't allowed to go. And we only, sometimes would rent Disney movies and stuff like, on Saturday afternoons after cartoons, they would play old movies on one of the 4 channels that we got. And if it was in black and white, my father just didn't really bother me with it because there's no cursing and there's no nudity in those. He didn't care about the violence, as much violence as you wanted. I watched old Westerns and old Bogey. And while my peers were all into, John Hughes and Rob Lowe movies, I was, way into Catherine and Aubrey Hepburn and Cary Grant and all those things. So, eventually I went to college and I did catch up on all the movies, and I loved all those John Hughes movies and stuff, but I just always had, my first loves were those old movies. So that's where my own obsession started with. Sam's just sort of refusing to see the things that are in front of his face. So the reader is figuring things out before Sam is,
right.
But it's all coming together despite him, even though it's happening all around him. I wouldn't say accidentally got a newspaper job, but I had never worked at I'd never been a journalist before, and I guess the term is lied on my resume. And I told them that I had some background working at a newspaper in college, and they didn't check. So I got a job when I was at a newspaper and worked my way up to the arts and entertainment editor position in Boulder, Colorado. And Boulder's kind of a funny, odd little place. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it at all. But
Work in Mindy, that's all I know about Boulder.
Yeah, it's got this weird position it's just a small mountain town, but it's got this weird, like, larger position in the in the culture as this, like, very liberal place that got really on the map in the 60s because Kerouac sort of discovered it, and Allen Ginsberg founded a Buddhist university there. And then, people just started coming. It's such a beautiful place. Wealthy people started buying up, and then the local people could no longer afford to live in their own city. So it was just an interesting place to be at that point in my life, and an interesting stage in my life. And that all sort of, I melded together.
Is that the Daily Camera? Is that what it's called?
The Daily Camera is the daily newspaper there, but I was working for the Boulder Weekly, which is the alternative, much smaller newspaper there. Yeah.
That's what happened to Lake Tahoe. My sister lived in Tahoe for years. Nobody could afford to live there now. All the millionaires and billionaires bought it all up. Yeah.
Well, I'm living in Austin now, and it's kind of a similar problem. So I need to move to a less cool city, I think, is the thing.
Exactly. I live in
Lincoln,
Brooklyn.
Nebraska. The rent's not going to go up anytime soon or whatever. But then you have to live in Lincoln, Nebraska. So, there's those things.
And I just realized as a lot of these chapters are movies that we've done on this show.
Yes.
Yeah.
If not most of them. I didn't go through and I thought I went through and highlighted, but I guess I didn't. Yeah, I think most of them. I think most of them are movies that we've covered.
We've covered
over
so
the
many,
years,
Dale.
which is kind of fun.
We've covered so many.
I know you guys have been doing it for so long. Yeah, I was definitely looking back through your archives, and I'm like, oh, you guys you're my people. You're definitely going to understand what's going on, and your audience is perfect for this type of book. Yeah, it was a fun book. It's a weird thing because most of us who this podcast is great because most of us who love books also love movies. We love narratives, right? And so, but you do see a lot of movie adaptations of books, but you don't really see that many books where movies are sort of a primary theme in there. I want to read that, I want that out there. I would love to do that. And then, when I'm writing this book, I get to go back and rewatch a bunch of old movies. I have to for research,
Right. Same.
So it was
fun
to do. Yeah, your book about the Brooklyn cinema. I mean, what a fun. Yeah, you're going to be stuck with this project for a couple of years. Yeah, so there's two things I always have when I'm starting off a thing of one, am I going to be, I need to be interested enough. Do I want to do this research? Do I want to do? And then the other is my wife kind of needs to sign off because she's going to be living with it for a couple of years. Right. I'm going to be annoying her and can you reread this paragraph? Cause I put a comma in a different place, that kind of thing.
So let's talk a little bit about, speaking of obsession, perfect segue to talk about we're not going to, we just said a little while ago, we're not going to go too far into Hans Christian Andersen. We just discussed him not too long ago. We do need to talk about him a little bit because there are some things in his IRL that are relevant to the story that we're talking about today.
Hans Christian Andersen was born April 2nd, 1805. He is a legend in Copenhagen in Denmark. That's where he's from. They have statues of him everywhere. He is one of the top people known for fairy tales. We discussed him in our Disney episode. We did a month of Disney in December. We talked about The Little Mermaid, not the one that was just released, by the way. We stuck with the original Disney version, but we talked more about him there. He was an intense person. He was a very pious person. He was also someone personality-wise. He was actually friends with Charles Dickens. He actually was so annoying to Dickens that Dickens had to kick him out of his house, which is kind of funny because Dickens was his own kind of The Emperor's New Clothes. Like I said, The Little Mermaid, The Princess and the Pea, the Snow Queen, and the Ugly Dumpling. Dumpling, excuse me. I keep seeing Thumbelina.
Thumbelina.
Thumbelina. Anyway, he passed away in 1875. Like I said, he is considered one of the godfathers of fairy tales. He's definitely a hero in his native Denmark. And he wrote this story today, and we have a Karen in our story today.
We do have a Karen. Their main character is Karen. And Karen was also the name of Hans Christian Andersen's sister.
Yes. And they didn't like each other very much, apparently. He thought she was once again, he was a persnickety guy.
I guess not, if you've read the story. Yeah.
He thought she was vain and selfish. And that's sort of, some of these fairy tales, you're supposed to learn the lesson. He was a very Christian-based person. So you're supposed to be somebody that you think about God in all of your life and how you want to, how you want to be accepted in the afterlife. It depends on how you deal with how you are in this world on the earth. And he apparently thought Karen wasn't so great. But this is about a girl. She's a peasant girl. She's very vain and she's spoiled. And she has a pair of red shoes made for her. And is it her mother that has them made for her?
She's like a wastrel in the street. And one day she's adopted by this old woman who is colorblind.
Right.
And says, he takes her in and adopts her as her own and she says, I'm going to have a pair of shoes made for you, so you can be dressed up when we go to church, because that's what good people do. And she's like, okay, I don't remember if she sends her to the shoemaker, but anyway, she has the little girl pick out what she wants for her shoes, and the little girl picks out completely inappropriate red shoes for church, which the pearl clutching of Hans Christian Andersen. I would just imagine him just like salivating as he's like writing the story.
Yeah, you really have to go back to the 1800s and think about, like, I guess that would have been scandalous,
you had to wear black shoes to church. You had to not be, and this is also based, by the way, his father was a cobbler, and at one time somebody came in with a pair of shoes and they didn't like his work, and he was so offended that he took scissors and he cut them in half versus getting paid for the shoes. He was just like, you don't appreciate me. You don't deserve my awesome shoe work that I'm doing here. So she gets these shoes, and these shoes make her feel great about herself. She's already pretty vain, and she keeps wearing them to church, even though she's told you shouldn't be wearing them to church. What part does she start dancing in them? Is it pretty?
Okay, so she's
I read this a few days ago. Sorry.
She gets the red shoes, sneakily and under dubious pretenses. The old woman takes her to church thinking that she's dressed, modestly with respectable black shoes. And they show up at church, and the whole church is scandalized by the little girl in the red shoes. And there's an old soldier, I think he is, on the steps of the church.
Right.
And he's creepy. We'll just put it that way. And he's a real creeper. And he says to this little girl, he's like, oh, those are some awfully nice, fancy dancing shoes you have there. And she's like, thanks. She continues to try to trick the old woman into wearing these red shoes. The old woman takes them away. I think she sneaks them back again. It's a whole back and forth. And when she's in church, rather than paying attention to what the preacher is saying, or I don't know, the pastor or whatever kind of church it is, she can't stop admiring her shoes. So the whole time she's in church, when she's supposed to be paying attention to God's word, she's rather, being vain and looking at her shoes and turning her feet this way and that. And then another time later on, after she's done this several times, the creepy soldier again makes the remark about her dancing shoes, and he taps the shoes. He's got like something or other that he taps her little shoes with. And she does a little little dance step, show off. And then she finds like her feet start to itch. And that's when the shoes start. At first she's delighted, like, oh, look at me. With these shoes, I could do anything. I could, like, if you remember when you were a kid and you would get brand new sneakers and you felt like you could run faster.
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, isn't it? And, so that's when she starts dancing, and she's like, oh, that's great. Look what I could do. I could do this. I could do that. I can leap, I can spin, da, 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 da. And then eventually she's like, okay, I'm ready to stop now. I'm getting a little tired. And her feet do not stop dancing. They keep dancing and keep dancing. And she can't stop and eat. They're dancing her where she doesn't want to go. They're dancing her into the graveyard. They're dancing her, to not great places. They're dancing her and just losing all sense of time. She can't eat. She's becoming like a wraith. I think the story says. Eventually she's dancing and she sees that the old woman is she's either has died or she is dying, and they're taking the woman out and they're doing the funeral. She can't go to the funeral because she can't stop dancing. And she finally I don't remember if it's a wood chopper or an executioner.
House.
Right? It's an executioner.
It's an executioner who lives in the
neighborhood. Like your local executioner. Like you have. You got your dry cleaners.
Cobbler.
Yeah.
The executioner.
And she begs him to cut off her feet so that she can renounce her vanity and go to church like a good pious woman. So he does. He's like, sure. He cuts her feet off.
Right.
And she's like, oh, I'm so relieved. And she's on crutches now. And she's like, okay, finally I'm going to make up for this. And she hobbles herself to church. And when she gets to the church, her disembodied foot stumps in the red shoes are dancing in front of the church and will not allow her to enter the church. And I forget what happens. This happens a couple of times.
Right.
And eventually she manages to, I don't remember if the townspeople chase the feet away, because at this point she's repented for her sins, And so she finally is allowed on her crutches to do what her heart's desires, to come in and sit in the presence of God in the church. Mm-hmm. And she hobbles on her crutches into the church, and she sits down, and she's so grateful to be surrounded by good, God-fearing people. She's so delighted to, be hearing the pastor speaking that she dies from happiness. She's in church for 10 minutes. And she died. The end, Karen.
Yeah. And it's all about vanity. There's an angel that warns her,
and pride.
Mm-hmm. And this is, you're being selfish and you're all about self-absorbed, and that this is your lesson. So once she gets her feet hacked off, then at the very end, she's like, okay, I've accepted God. The God accepts me now. And then her soul flies to heaven. So she's gone. She's just like, that's what it was all for. 1845.
Happy ending.
Which a lot of those fairy tales, and we've discussed this. We did Snow White, and we've done a few, especially because
and the Little Mermaid, for that matter.
Mermaid. A lot of these fairy tales are grim, are really there's some intense lessons going on here. And
yeah, you always it, but then you don't. I hadn't ever read this one before, and just the Old Testament aspect of it, I was like, oh my God! He chops off her feet and then just makes her new wooden feet. Also, did he just have those lying around? He just knows how to make some wooden feet there. But
what's that about?
Horrible. Also, I'm not sure they have the medical to like keep somebody alive after.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't joy that she died from it. Sure.
Just bacteria that's set
There
in.
might have been some other complication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's often a lesson too. It's about vanity and not being righteous. That's kind of pretty much a big theme. And the story is used as the background for many things. I looked up, and HBO had a fairy tale series, and there's been other people. Kate Bush has a song called The Red Shoes. I mean, that's also based on the movie. That's the story. So let's get into this amazing movie that I'm telling you both. This was the first time I've seen this movie. I'd never seen it before.
Oh, really?
What?
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
And I have
isn't it
Criterion.
amazing?
I'm
So good.
so good. So let's do this. We'll play the trailer, and then we will talk about this movie.
The Red Shoes. Daring the original musical that captures all the glamour of the south of France in exquisite technicolor. Blending compelling beauty and high drama with a love story of sheer enchantment. Assembling a cast of international stars to endow an enthralling film with their rich vitality. And making the outstanding debut of this or any other year, a lovely red-headed girl graced with all the talents, Moira Shearer.
I want to know where we are. Go, Shay. Go! I thought once, Mr. Lermontov, that there would be no room in my life for anything but dancing.
You will think so again, my dear.
You're jealous of her.
Yes, I am.
But in the way that you will never understand.
Well, Vicky,
Julian, I love you.
you love that more.
So this film is directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. This is a very British production. That's when you're going to hear names like Pressburger in somebody's name. It's filmed in England. It's one of their, and in Paris. It's in many locations, but it's a very British production. They had also this is the follow-up to Black Narcissus that they covered. Mm-hmm. And so they also collaborated on the screenplay. And also, they made this in the dancing world. They just decided, like, let's just talk about what it's like to be a dancer in a production. It's one of my favorite openings for a movie ever, is the way this movie opens, which is all these people just fighting for these seats.
They're so excited to go to the ballet.
They are.
Between men, sir. It's the students.
Down with parents!
All right, let them in.
Swine beasts! well.
Road the 600!
Hey, ease up.
You're sitting on my cloak.
Sitting up down below?
Not a sausage.
Volunteer.
Ah, you'll do it.
It's like a Beatles, Elvis.
Yes.
They're young people. They're like students. Yeah.
They're rushing. What does he say at the beginning? Death to tyrants when they wouldn't open the door for him.
And they're up there forever waiting
It's so
for
fun,
this.
yeah.
Yes, but it's like,
yeah, it's such a fun opening. You get so excited for, like, with them. You're like, oh my goodness.
what is this? And some of them are into the dancing and some of them are into the music. And they
That's right. They're all snobs and hipsters in their own way.
always have been. There's always been hipsters.
It's pre-rock and roll, but it is also significantly it's post-war England, and they've just been through the Blitz, and this is a time of great austerity. So yeah, I can imagine going to see a ballet with like beautiful costumes and beautiful ballerinas and amazing music was probably was a kind of whole scene at the time. Although the play, the screenplay was originally developed by a producer named Alexander Korda in the 30s, so before the war. This was already kind of in the works. He was married to Merle Oberon, who we talked about when we talked about The Children's Hour.
Yes,
like
these three.
This movie is like a big bulletin board with the tacks and the pieces of yarn all over the place. Vaslav Nijinsky. No, not Nijinsky. Diaghilev, I'm thinking of. Diaghilev, who was the director of the Ballet Russe. He was this legendary Russian impresario who ran this globally, completely just blew everybody away ballet company, Ballet Russe. I'm talking like kind of post in the teens, back in the teens and 20s. He was lovers with one of the most famous ballet dancers, Nijinsky.
Yes, Spring Awakening.
And he also had a reputation for firing his dancers when they would get married. In his case, he had a relationship with the man in a male dancer who he got married, and he kicked both to another dancer, kicked them both out of the company. Nijinsky, the dancer, later had a lot of mental health issues, and he had to leave dancing because of his deteriorating mental health. And so a lot of that story is in the original screenplay that was developed by Korda, which was then taken over by Pressman and Powell, in this post-war production. Now, let's talk about the cast, because so put a pin in that on our bulletin board with the yarn. And let's talk about the cast of this play, because one of the things that Pressman and Powell thought when they took over the production of this after the war was, we can't have Merle Oberon's wonderful, and we all agree she's like a great talent, but not a ballerina. And this story is not going to work unless you have actual dancers, because it's just not going to fly, if you will.
If they did that today, they'd do the reverse, right? They would get you'd get the big actor, and then they'd brag about how much dancing like that they took.
Exactly.
But they went the opposite way, which is amazing.
Let's find dancers who can act.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And this was Moira Shearer's first movie. Oh my God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How beautiful is she, first of all?
Natural. And she didn't want to do it.
No.
It took her like 2 years to talk her into it or something. Yeah, a year to talk her into it, and finally she relented. But yeah, I was shocked when I found out. I was like,
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
How has she not been in movies since she was a tiny girl? She's such a good actor. She's amazing.
She's so natural in it. She's like, there was not a moment where I was like, oh, you can tell that she's not like a trained, actress.
Right.
It was everything. Couldn't imagine anybody else doing this.
Ça va? Any swelling? I mean the head. All that clapping, bravos, roses, poof, all that's nothing. But when I, who have seen Pavlova Karsavina dance, tell you, that last night you were not bad. Not good, but not bad. That's something. Now I tell you the truth. It was good.
Thank you, Mr. Ljubov.
My name is Grischa.
Mine is Vicky.
How do you do? Arms later. So, Boris Lermontov wants to see you. Why in class time? Why?
We have Han Walbrook plays Boris Lermontov. I hope I'm saying that right. And I
love him. He's such an
German,
evil guy.
correct? He's German.
Is he?
Yes,
I mean, that sounds right.
See, I was told I was doing some research, and he was a gay man that was escaped the Nazis. They were going to round him up with, the Nazis went after homosexuals and crippled people and Jewish people. We have Marius Goring as Julian Craster, Robert Helpman, Ivan Boslowski, Leonid Mazmin as Grischa, Albert Basterman Sergei, Ludmila Chernia as Irina. She's the one that gets married. We should say also, dancers, they needed the real dancers.
These are all dancers, we should say, that are acting, who could also act.
Right, and their bodies are everything for their work.
Yeah, amazing.
And so that's one of the reasons why, like, if you're going to get married and have a kid, it's going to change your body so much that what am I going to do with you? So, and there were so many people willing to just take your position. I mean, but these people abuse their bodies basically to get maybe a 10, 15 year career, excuse me. If they're lucky.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Ballerinas, just what it does to the feet, much less like everything else. The only comparable thing is gymnastics, but like, it is.
Yeah.
Insane.
I agree. So, as we said, so Boris Lermontov, who's played by Anton Walbrook, he is based on Diaghilev, who is the director of the Ballet Russe. As I mentioned before, Diaghilev had an affair with probably his most legendary star, Nijinsky, who he booted out of the company when Nijinsky got married to a woman. And as I said, later on, he had very serious mental health issues. And again, this is a long time ago when behavioral health was extremely primitive compared to today. In real life, when Diaghilev broke it off with, or whoever broke off the relationship between Nijinsky and Diaghilev, the next relationship with a dancer that Diaghilev had was with a young Leonid Messina, who plays Grischa in our film.
Okay.
So he was as you can see in this movie, I mean, he might be my favorite dancer in this movie. He's
great.
He did all his own choreography.
Yeah, they gave him a separate title for doing his choreography. Yeah.
It's my favorite choreography. Definitely.
Yeah.
Like when it's so complicated, first of all. He's a good actor. He's got a very thick accent that he's kind of struggling with at times.
Yeah.
But as far as his acting ability, it is excellent.
Yeah.
And, but my favorite thing is when he has the shoes in his hands and he's making them dance with his hands, and they look like there is a ballerina dancing in them, but it's just his hands making them. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he had quite a long relationship, I think, with Diaghilev and the Ballet Russe. So this is a story that was extremely close to his life.
I also really like sort of queer representation in this movie. It's not nobody's directly stated that they're gay or whatever, but this is certainly in the ballet culture or whatever. And like you had said, there's certainly some of these characters based on people who were known to be gay. There's just in a lot of these old movies, the representation is so terrible. Gay people are sort of depicted either as villains or just horribly. And the characters who you think well, this person might be gay. He's just a complex person who's a great artist and fulfilling their role and doing a great job within this whole. It's not really commented on. It's not like this is a big thing. It's just that's who they are. I really like that and appreciate that in this film.
Yeah, they're not coding so much. They're
No, they really aren't.
You get in American films like
just the reality of the culture that they're in, and they're recognizing it and displaying it. Yeah.
And he is the king of that world.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should also say that, I'm sorry, Margo. Well, first of all, that ballet shoes, toe shoes are very, very brutal on the body. It is that is the top dancing that you could do. And also at the time, especially the ballet world thought the film world was gross compared to what they did. What they did was art. What they're doing is cheap. It's flashy. It's not like what we do. So it was.
That was part of Moira Shearer's like thing about not wanting to do it, right? He's like,
yeah. She thought it was
I don't make movies. I'm an artist.
Right. Yeah. And that's it. So it was very, and then, so there's also in the ballet world, there's a little bit of a debate, like how close is this to what a real ballet companies like? And I think backstage and especially the training that these people do, it's they just do every step over and over and over again as they're building it up. And it's very, like I said, it's a very physically, it's brutal on their bodies. And it's also stressful. And then there's also that nitpicking of you need to drop 2 pounds and you need to move your shoulder back. And there's a lot of manipulation of your body, like that's done constantly.
Scorsese had a kind of a cool commentary, he loves the red shoes, and he was talking about that depiction of whether or not this is close to realism as far as backstage, and he's like, it doesn't really matter,
right?
They're capturing what the feeling of the things, the atmosphere, and getting that across to an audience that doesn't know ballet itself and certainly doesn't know the backstage culture of it. So they're just getting that. And I do think they get that across very well. I don't know anything about ballet, but it's certainly had a huge appreciation for the rigorousness of it and the physicality of it after watching this movie.
Moira Shearer is in the audience watching, and she's the niece of someone who's special, who's a
rich lady.
A rich lady.
A rich lady. She's there in the box with her aunt, wearing a little crown, like you do.
Like one does.
Wouldn't we all love to go to ballet with a little crown on?
I would.
And Lermontov is behind a curtain, like the Phantom of the Opera or something like that. All he does, you just see his hand reaching out for a pen or something. And
so there's the
cheering.
crowd that's up, that's basically in, all penned together in one spot, and she's in a very cushy spot, but she wants to be a dancer herself. So when she goes to a party and she talks to the director, to Boris, he's kind of checking her out, and then he's going to give her a chance to try out. And I can't emphasize this enough. You do need someone who's a dancer to do this. I mean, because it would not work if it was Merle Oberman or.
But she's not even dancing yet. She hasn't done a dance move yet, and it's all her acting so far. And she has to own these scenes, and she totally does.
Absolutely does. And then when she tries out, and he picks her, and you see just all these really great people that she's with.
Good morning, my dear young ladies. I hope I find you all very well this morning. There are just one or two things I would like to say to you today. As you know, the ballet is leaving at Saturday for Paris. Now, I can't imagine anything more enchanting than being able to invite you, all of you, to accompany us there. But I'm afraid this great pleasure must be denied me. To those whom we must regretfully leave behind, I'd like to say just this, please. Don't be discouraged. The fact that we can't take you with us doesn't mean that you're bad dancers. It just means that this year, unfortunately, we haven't got enough room. Now, will you please step out, Miss Fain, and you, Miss Baines, and you, Miss Hardiman, and Miss Longman, please. Yes. And may I thank you four ladies very much for the hard work you've done this year. And I'm sure my gratitude is equitable, Mr. Ljubov. Yes, and maybe next year we shall be meeting you again. Good morning.
Vicky, he means us.
They just show up. Also, we should say, sorry, it's Julian Craster. He finds out that his professor had stolen his work and used his
Professor
music.
Palmer, that thief, yeah.
Austin Trevor plays him. So he goes and complains. It's like, hey, this guy stole my music for your stupid play and your musical. And so he gives him a chance to prove that it was actually him, and then turns around and says, well, do you want to work here? 8 pounds a week plus blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the French that's spoken here with the English, like the Fringlish or whatever you want to say.
I love what Lermontov is wearing. I don't know what that is. It's like a Cossack or something. Like,
Listen,
what?
Let me just say right off the bat that on all counts of this film, I am 100% team Lermontov. First of all, sunglasses gold. I want all the sunglasses and all the hats.
Oh,
and
yeah, great.
Well, he's
on the train.
He's on the train. That he's got those kind of like cat eye ones, and then he's also got the wire rim.
He's got the most wonderful mustache too.
Yes,
dapper and villainous at the same time.
Exactly. And he's like, just a little more villainous, please. And then he's just chilling. He's just chilling, having his breakfast in a silk. It is silk. Embroidered
all the way to the ankles.
All the way.
That is just what he wakes
Come
up
on.
in. He just wakes up.
He woke up like this.
It's my morning. Yeah. Oh, I want to rewind to the party real quick because it's one of my favorite lines. The aunt or whatever is trying to talk him into seeing, and he's giving her a speech about how ballet is not, ballet is his religion and you don't want to see a religious practice in such a place. But then he like sort of brushes her off and leaves. And she gives him like the best backhanded compliment ever. She goes, "Attractive brute." I love it.
And everything he says in this film, he's totally right. He's
You're totally
100% right. Yeah. You invite him to the party to make him work? Get out
here. That is very true. Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah.
And everything he says to both Moira and both
Victoria Page. The fact that her last name is Page, like a blank sheet,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Everything he says to her is 100% true. Everything he says to Craster, the composer, is 100% true. He's super generous to both of these nobodies.
I love that Craster shows up also, and he wrote a note to him, like really pissed off, like this person stole my work, and then was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to kill my career." Runs to him and says, "Please don't open that envelope," because who hasn't done this before? You sent the email or the text that you give anything to take back. But he also is just like, he has good instincts. He realized this guy's going to be the next generation of composer. I need to work with him now.
He puts them both on the world stage. And not only that, he's 100% upfront with them. Listen, I do not tolerate romances in my company, and here's why. So I don't think he's the villain.
No. He's just
I don't think he's the villain in this piece. I'm going to say that. Anna, it's my take.
I'm with you.
Impossible. I like how he always says impossible for things. That that's his insult. Your score is impossible. Your dancing is impossible.
Well, of course, Julian and Vicky fall in love. It's just meant to be. It had to happen, and that's becoming. And Ludmila, who is is a real life dancer. And boy, is she beautiful.
Oh, she's the other prima ballerina in the company.
That's like Betty Page.
She's more of what you think of. Yeah, you think of when you like the prima donna of shows up 40 minutes late and is like, "You will start when I get here," type of thing. But also, she isn't as bad as they make her. Like in the end, she's like a sweetheart, I think. But yeah,
she gets married and she has to go. So then that gives Vicky her big chance. But of course, Vicky and Julian fall in love, much to the consternation of their boss. There's so much here that I also like. The settings are amazing. Monte Carlo.
I know.
It's such eye candy, and I just imagine like a post-war audience going and seeing this on the big screen in Technicolor. You would go see it as many times as you possibly could.
Yeah,
the colors are amazing.
Amazing. The sets. It makes me hate CGI so much.
Yes.
I love those sets.
Well,
they're amazing.
so we should say Scorsese was a part of it. He is a super fan of this movie. He owns original red shoes signed by Morris Shearer. He has scripts. He has everything. And so he was the person that said, we need to revitalize this film and save it. And so they filmed it in black and white. And the person that was in charge of it was an artist, not a photographer, not a film person. Like the cinematographer was Jack Carter. So they filmed it and it was on 3 different frames, and then they color coded them, soaked them in color, and then put them together. And the only way that they could fix it was digitally. So they went back for every single those. So there's 3 films they have to go through and then put the color in again. And then they enriched it because sometimes it can look blurry. And it's his work.
They did such a good job.
It's
it's not beautiful. Like, because they captured that thing. It's not like it's a real color. It doesn't like it's a real color. It's got to be technical.
Right. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
For it to work right, for it to look right. Yeah.
There's reds and golds and blues, and they're just, and then with her red hair and her pale skin, I mean.
Oh, I know. All those freckles when you she's laying down, she's got all these freckles down
amazing.
There that they didn't put makeup on to cover up, It's great.
It's spectacular. The whole look of it. The music, of course, is wonderful. And I love that we get, again, I'm Team Lermontov. He's so honest with her. She got the job in the first place because the other chick got married. So you know what the rules are, lady. Going in.
Coming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so does the composer know what he's doing by falling in love with her. He's ruining her career. So there, I think he's the villain.
Well, also I kind of agree with that too, because I was thinking towards the end, Lermontov puts the question to Victoria Page, has he volunteered to give up what you're giving up? Like he's doing that? Like her career, she has the bigger career. Like he's a talent for sure, but she's the international star. Like she has the bigger career. She has the bigger it's did he ask her to give up? And no, he did. He didn't offer to give that up for her.
And let's be fair. He can be a composer for the rest of his life. She can't be a prima ballerina for the rest of her life.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's the villain.
Do you think Marius Goring could play the piano? Because it really you can usually tell.
If he couldn't, it's convincing, right?
Yeah, because they're showing the fingers and they're showing him doing the things, which usually they kind of do cuts where you don't see that, and it looks very much like he's doing it very well.
Oh, what I was going to say, I remember now. So Lermontov, is giving them both this global platform. He commissions this ballet that he loves it so much. He's commissioning a second ballet from the composer, from Marius Goring's character. And what I love in the movie is that we get to see these snippets of Moira Shearer dancing in all of these other roles, as the time is going by. We see her in Swan Lake, and we see her in Sleeping Beauty, I think, and different famous ballet roles that we get to see her do, which again, for a post-war British audience, I can't imagine how dazzling. I mean, it's dazzling now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, we haven't really talked about the ballet, the fact that they stopped the movie.
Right.
The movie, and how long is it? It's 20 minutes, right?
It's almost 20 minutes
and something. Yeah.
Of a ballet that just happens with these amazing, it's a ballet that they're performing, and it feels like the set of a really cool ballet, really well done. But then they do these really cool
movie tricks
and that nobody else was doing, and they just go for it in every single Some of them work a little bit others, but you got to admire just how much they're going for it every single time. Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't even, I think we don't even here. I'll double check that in just a second. But I think the movie is called The Red Shoes.
Right.
And there's not a mention of the red shoes until we're 40 minutes into this movie.
Yeah.
We're well into the story of this movie before the red shoes even comes up at all. And yeah, you're right. We're an hour in when everything screeches to a halt, and we're all just going to watch a ballet now, and it's spectacular.
Yeah. And I, because I'm not a ballet guy. I'm not a dance guy. So I'm an old movie guy. So when I'm first watching this, I'm okay, no, but I was enraptured that entire time. I am oh my God, like, don't ever stop. Just keep going. Like, it was fantastic. I also love how when the Red Shoes come in, they're their own character.
Right.
They do a thing of like picking them out as if they're auditioning. They have the little thing with a stick of like, not this one, not this one. Oh, those are the Red Shoes. And then they become like a character for the rest of the movie. It's such a great, it does so many great subtle things.
I hadn't seen this movie. This newspaper man.
Oh my gosh, when the guy turns into newspaper.
Oh my God.
What?
Yeah. The little foreshadowing they do earlier when they first, well, a couple of foreshadowings when Vicky and they first find out that they're both doing the Red Ballet. They're on that balcony and the train goes by underneath, and you're like, oh my God, you know. But then afterwards, she goes and steps on a newspaper, and it's got both of them in it. And then, yeah, you see the dancing newspaper that turns into the dancing man covered in newspaper.
I hadn't seen this film in a really long time, and my memory of it, the character of Lermontov was a very similar thing to that critic character in Laura.
Yeah.
How he's gay. He's obsessed with her. She becomes sort of a protege of his but he becomes obsessed to the point of destroying her. And watching this, I was kind of surprised watching this. As I said, I was watching going like, what's wrong with what he's saying? Like he owns this company. It's his business. He's built a very successful global reputation. He's got all these people depending on him. Yeah, he's got some rules that he needs to do to protect his business. And he's really clear about them, I feel, he's kind of a different character. And I remembered, as a much younger person, being like, well, she should be able to marry the guy. But now I'm like, well, what's this? Who's this composer guy just coming in and like making her give up her dreams?
She says to us that that's all she's dancing because she just can't do anything else. She doesn't want to do anything else. It's life for her. It's
that's what she. Why do you live? Right. I don't know why, but I must, and that's the same. Like a couple of little things, because Lermontov he does have his rules and he does have his company, but he is pretty possessive, like unhealthily. I will
seriously
say, possessive. Yeah, and there's a couple of times like for one, I love how he keeps getting whiter as by the time he's on the train,
his shoulder pads. You mean?
Yeah, he's like a ghost. Like he's.
Oh, you mean his face whiter, like the color of the white. Yeah, his skin gets more and more pale because he never goes outside. That's what he's got to have.
Yeah,
that's
like
during COVID.
Right, yeah, exactly. But then also there's a couple like one where and she starts to say something. And he's like, Ch-ch-ch. I'll do the talking, you do the dancing. And I was like, oh, that's okay. That's a little much, Boris. Like, let's dial it back a little bit. Yeah, they're both. I think it's such a good because it's about controlling men. That's what I think is. I'm not sure if that was what they were really depicting when they were making.
Was that?
The movie.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was
the intention.
Their aim. Yeah. But it really works. It really works. I think that's why this movie also endures, is because it really works on a more modern level of how, like, we can see that, we can empathize with more. Women can be like, yes, in so many aspects of, you don't have to be a ballerina. This is, an extreme situation, but to see that men controlling, like, trying to control women's
your
bodies.
Life changes when you get married, you have kids, like, you're supposed to put all your dreams to the side.
Yeah, there's no work accommodations for you. Like, there's things you have to give up your job. We were going to promote you, but now you have a kid. So, that like all these things are like very like translatable and relatable to today. I don't really think that that's what they were going for.
It was art and obsession. That's what they're going for.
Art and exactly. Like you have to suffer for your art is kind of like.
And we still talk about that to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, still a thing. Yeah.
I think all the time of that end scene where her now husband, the composer, and her boss, who she's already made the decision to go back and work for, right? Yeah. They are literally arguing over her, and she's in the middle. And neither one of them is seeing her as an actual person in any of this, Lermontov is like, basically, this is my business asset. I'm trying to protect, and there's literally like curtains about to go up. But also her husband is like, basically, I want her because you want her, kind of almost, it seems like. He's not really looking at her and seeing what he's saying and doing and putting her in this position of having to choose what that is doing to her at all. And neither one of them is seeing her as a person, and that she's breaking in the middle of them.
Right.
They're both using different means of control for it. Like there's very few, I mean, especially at this time, there's very few opportunities for women to like just have a non-traditional life, much less a life of art and creativity and stardom, right? So he's like doing that, like, and if you don't do it with me, you're not going to be able to like do this. Like I'm the one who will make you, I'm alone who will give you this life. And then the other is like the more traditional, like family and love and like things. And he's like, I have that. If you don't, you have to choose between one or the other, and it just like breaks her, which is such a good, I don't know, it just works on so many like levels still. It's great.
Well, also since, I mean, we've known, Margot and I are both, we're women, we've known this for a long time, but this Me Too movement, I think, made a lot of men realize like, oh, women are made to feel bad about themselves in the slight, they never want people to feel bad. So they're always like, they bend themselves into a pretzel to make themselves amenable to very difficult people, especially difficult men like your Harvey Weinsteins, or, you know, that's just how you get a role in Hollywood, and that's just how you get ahead.
It really, I mean, it's haunting. I'm sure. So what was it like seeing it for the first time? I can't believe you've never seen this movie before.
I don't know why I never saw it before. I love a chorus line, and that's like one of my favorite musicals, and they talk about, I know. What can I tell you? I just have some gaps. That's why we do the show, Margot, because
that's right. It's true. This is true.
Things we've never would have read before, and so I watched it 2.5 times this week. I want to watch it again. Just gorgeous. It's so beautiful just to look at and to listen. And Moira Shearer, I'm just a hugest fan of now. I wish she'd done a million movies. Like,
oh, I know.
My God.
I mean, just the way she's able to express herself through movement is so impressive and moving. That when at the end of the movie,
oh yes, we should talk about the
you
ending.
could never do this with a not dancer, right? So that ending freezes, and then you see her feet, and the feet are sort of like a little bit twitchy, and you're like, oh no, and her dancers, you know, the attendant, the maid who's helping her get ready, like sees that something is real wrong, and she goes screaming off for help. She races, again, spoiler alert, she races off the balcony, you know, down to the train track below. But if you look at, and if you pause it even or slow it down, it's like the feet are dancing away from her over the balcony. It's like she's not in control of her feet. They are just going on their own, just like in the ballet. I love that moment in the ballet too, where the character, where she's playing Karen, I guess, realizes that these shoes are not letting me go back home. They're not letting me, I want to go here, but my feet are going there. And you see her fighting. It's very convincing. And it's a similar thing at the end, when she goes, and it's very quick, but her physicality of that scene is so impressive.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to tell you that Miss Page is unable to dance tonight, nor indeed any other nights. Nevertheless, we've decided to present Dress shoes! It is the belly that made her name, whose name she made. We present it because we think she would have wished it.
So she just totters out of the theater, and then we hear the train coming, and her husband is looking towards her, and she leaps. And we don't know, did she make it happen, or the feet made her? We don't know, it's suicide or what it is, or she's possessed.
Or some magical obsession of this, like the red shoes come to life.
Yeah.
And it's like a beautiful swan dive kind of that she does too. Even that is like
beautiful.
Even that is like this beautiful like dance move. Like
it's so convincing. Yeah. It's so gorgeous.
Also, she has this great looks on her face like a couple of times, like when she's doing that first sort of practice dance before she's getting her first dance before, and they do that cool camera thing where she's doing the spinning and then the camera spins with it, so you get the perspective. And she stops and she sees Lermontov in the audience, and she has this look on her face, like, I don't even know how to describe this look, but it's just wide-eyed, like kind of like crazy and like I've done it, kind of like thing. And like, oh my God, like this look. I've never seen that look on anybody else before.
The eyes in this movie are incredible.
The eyes are,
yes.
The eye acting.
Yeah.
Eye acting.
For everybody. Yeah. When Lermontov like smashes the mirror. I mean, it is so
and then he
good.
comes out at the end and says, Miss Page will not be able to perform this evening.
And he's like, so over, like, and he has to sort of shout it with emotion.
Yes.
Because he's to a theater. So it's like, I hadn't even thought about that because it's got to be a live theater. So he's got to project all the way. So it's an emotional, like, yelling. It's,
so
amazing.
Good.
Yeah. He's trying to say it really clearly. He's trying to not break.
Yeah.
But he has to communicate this to the entire giant audience that's there. And then I love they decide to do the ballet, but without her there. So but what we, the audience, sees is just the beginning and how weird that looks. The absence of her, the void of that. Yeah. And we understand because we've already seen the entire ballet. Yeah. We understand with only seeing this little glimpse of it, like that this audience is now going to sit through the whole thing that we've just seen, but without Moira Shearer there.
Right.
Yeah, they have like a spotlight, but nothing, like the spotlight's in the right place, but there's nobody in the spotlight. Like that's so smart.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so good. It's just so good. The scene when they're in love and she's dancing and he's conducting, her husband is conducting, and Lermontov is observing because again, this is his company. And the conductor winks and blows a kiss at her. I was like, dude, you're at work. Really?
Yeah.
You are at work, sir.
Yeah. This is.
I do not. Team Lermontov.
He's showing off. Check that out. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Me. She's with me.
I love how hard you're defending Lermontov. I love it's like he's your uncle or something, and you're like, he was done dirty.
That's how I feel.
It's all fake news how he was portrayed.
Right.
The villain presented the actual villain.
Because he is an impresario. But it's different than it was different than how I remembered it watching it as a younger person. And to use the example of Laura again, you have this a very similar kind of dynamic and setup between these two characters. But when Laura, like, he really wants to possess her completely, mind, body, soul, every moment of the day. He wants to be in control of Laura. And she, in the end, if you remember at the end of the movie, like, she really feels sorry for him, and she accompanies him in the ambulance, right? But I feel like here, like, it really is about her ability as an artist that he is interested in. It's not that he doesn't want her to have love in her life. It's that, you told me that this is the thing that's important to you. And so we're going to do this thing. I'm going to put you on this stage. And, I just felt like he was super upfront with her, even though he's a domineering kind of a person. And he didn't try to sabotage their relationship either. He just made her choose.
He does want her to choose him. That is definitely, it is her choice. In the end, he's not doing anything to, like, physically force her. He even acknowledges, like, you can go dance at other places.
Yeah.
But nothing, like, you want to be the best, and you can only be the best with me. Like,
right. Which is true.
Which is very true.
It is.
Somebody, this movie, for those of you who've never seen it, it's streaming for free on YouTube right now. It's not bootleg or anything. Again, YouTube has been putting a lot of stuff out for free, like a lot of classic movies, making them available to stream for free. This is one of them right now that you can watch for free. And one of the comments that somebody put on the video on YouTube it said something like, let's just face it, if she goes with Julian, that's his name, if she goes with Julian, what's going to happen is she's going to end up having to dance for way longer than she normally would have, in not as great places, because she's going to have to support him for the rest of her life. Because he's not going to be as successful as she is.
Yeah.
Maybe the shoes knew that.
I don't know. Yeah, it's so funny to see people's takes on it. But it's not just about, like, the trickery of cinema, these effects. It's about the way that the story is told. It's the story that stays with you that is so haunting. It's really good.
The artistic way that they've done the movie magic in this too is just so many chances taken, so many like you didn't have to be that risky. And they're like, at that time, I'm sure, like, I mean, British cinema was not a risk taking, place either. I mean, they just did Black Narcissus. One of them, is it Powell who goes on? Does he do Peeping Tom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is
with Moira Shearer.
Movie that wasn't made by Hitchcock, like, ever. So, like, they're just great experimentalists. They're great artists. There's so many risks that they didn't have to take that they did. I think the movie budget was like £500,000, which I'm sure was a lot, like, at that time. But it was a huge hit. Both, I think in the United States, they made like 2 million or something. And then internationally, like.
I'd wait in line to see this. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
48, this would be thrilling. I'm sure Radio City or something. Yeah. We should say that it was nominated for Academy Awards Best Picture, Original Screen, no acting honors. It won for original score and the art direction. And I think it should have won for film editing, by the way, because that is a huge hero in this movie.
Tour de force with the editing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there really hasn't, like, I mean, there's The Black Swan, which is a good movie or whatever, but to try to find another movie that's done, anything close to this sense is like really hard.
Is the turning point about that? I think Anne Bancroft's in that. There's Amazon has it. It's okay.
I'll check that out.
It's like a 78, 79, and it's about the ballet world. And I love anything with Anne Bancroft. That's just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
agreed.
yeah, I'm trying to think of like actors that can, like John Travolta can act and can dance. And it's essential to his character in Saturday Night Fever. But yeah, how many people can do both? And I'm just completely
at that level. I don't know.
I mean, she is a natural.
But then, like when you see those musical things, those are usually pretty straightforward. like if they're going to like, oh, we're going to do a musical, it's like, I guess the closest would be something like Moulin Rouge, where like he's really doing some cool experimental movie magic stuff with, music and dancing and stuff like that. But like, you don't see those. Usually if you see they're like, we're going to try to make a pretty straightforward musical that, but not risk taking like that they're doing here in a big.
But there's also An American in Paris.
Yeah.
Which has that break for a very real ballet.
Oklahoma.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Oklahoma
did it.
But it's not a story about that world.
Yeah. Well, American Paris is like, I think they knew they could do that because of this movie, right?
Oh, there's no way you have American in Paris without this film.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. Yeah. And we haven't really talked about, like, it's such a horror film too. Like, it is such
it's totally a horror
like,
film.
yeah, like people like, I don't think that they knew they were making a horror film, but obviously those directors have those sensibilities, and like it has had so much influence on the horror genre, and it is one of those like psychologically horrifying movies. Like there's not a lot of blood and like, like one death in it, thing, but like it is a like bones deep horrifying movie, that really like you just think about it for days afterwards.
A ballet movie too.
Yeah,
it's a ballet movie.
Yeah, and those scenes, those are horror scenes, like those, like
when she has the knife in the ballet, and and it turns into a twig, and she throws it down, and it turns back into a knife.
Yeah, yeah. What is happening? And then she like, I love the parts where they during the because they intermix some psychological things of like, yeah, we're doing a straight up ballet, but then the guy turns into the guy who's like in the ballet, the main bad guy. He turns into Lermontov, and then he turns into Craster, and then she like dances into the silhouette of his empty silhouette. I'm like, what is going on? That's insanely cool. That's just it's such a cool movie.
I recommend. I definitely recommend.
So, are we saying we love the movie better?
The movie, yes.
Than definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad I read it.
Over Karen cutting off her feet. And
it's very easy to get. It's a super short read. It's like 12 pages, not even that.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out if you're interested. It does explain the ballet, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely hit me. Like when I read the story, though, I was like, oh my God, like it stuck with me. And like talk about somebody who, I mean, like the horror genre didn't really exist yet, but like Hans Christian Andersen is certainly a horror writer. Like he is, horrific. And the modern like takes on a lot of his stuff are Disney, but like this is a good child of Hans Christian Andersen. It doesn't have the religious message or whatever, but like the horrifying.
And the darkness of it is definitely there. Yeah.
Not really. I don't know if it's I don't know what you learn from
the ballet is the religion.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it is. He says that right there, doesn't he? He says, yeah, ballet is my religion. And yes. That's true. They worked so many like subtle things in to the thing. Yeah. It's great.
Who was the screenplay? I've forgotten all of a sudden.
The screenplay is by Powell Pressburger.
Oh.
Marius Goring. They also credit Hans Christian Andersen and Keith Winter on like not in the like the credit things. I think it's just Pressburger and Powell. But I think in the original they gave Hans Christian Andersen some credit too.
Hans Andersen, that's how they called him too.
Yeah, I was like, okay, real chummy, I guess.
All right, there's quite a few of them, but okay.
So next week we have another guest, but we'll get to them. We're going to keep that a little bit of a surprise. And I'll just say that if you are a longtime listener of the podcast, you might enjoy next week's episode. We're so glad, Dale, that you were able to join us. Can you, one more time, give us a plug for your book? Tell people where they can get it.
So the book is called The Mean Reds. It's a title taken from Breakfast at Tiffany's, which movie fans are the only people that ever know where that came from. It is a fun sort of noir satire, modern thing with just a ton of movie Easter eggs in it, especially old movies that movie fans are going to love. And you can, of course, get it on Amazon. You can go to my publisher's website, which is Stephen F. Austin State University Press. You can go to my website, which is dalebridges.org, and you can buy it through any of those means, or just Google it online. If you do purchase it, I'd love to get a rating from it on Amazon and Goodreads. That'd be great as well.
And tell them your social media.
I'm on Facebook. Just you go to Dale Bridges on Instagram. I'm at bridges.writer.
And I want to say also, Dale, you are an artist, and I was looking at your artwork. You have a separate website for your art, and it's beautiful.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was sort of a thing I got more into during the pandemic, and I've really been enjoying it. And that's up at dalebridgesart.com.
Once again, everybody, if you have ideas, please reach out to us at all those places we mentioned at the top of the show. Our email, once again, is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Margot, do we want to tell them what we're doing for the next episode? I mean, we have the interview, but then we're going to cover, just to give people time.
But then after that, if in case you all want to read along, those of you, we know some of you follow along with us, we're going to be covering 3 Days of the Condor. We both have our copies by James Grady, filmed in Brooklyn Heights, I think you said. Yeah.
Yep. Filmed in New York City and much of it in Brooklyn Heights. Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You could find me on Twitter at Brooklyn Margot. I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Instagram, Threads. That's my site. And my TikTok is at my name, Margot Donahue. And I do have some clips of the red shoes on there if you want to see for yourself. All right, everybody, stay safe, be well, and we'll be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book versus Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.